Okay, hello homesteaders and preppers. This episode I'm going to go over the allure of self-sufficient living, and that involves homesteading, prepping. It has gotten much more popular in the last few years. There has been a romanticized vision of what it is to live outdoors or self-sufficient. Many of you probably watched the show Yellowstone, and everybody wants to live in Montana. They want to live in the mountains. What is it, Homestead Rescue. A lot of people want to live in the homestead lifestyle. It is pretty romanticized, and same thing with prepping. I mean, a lot of people see some of these new movie right now, Homestead. I mean, it's a prepping movie about a homestead. There's a lot of Hollywood romanticized, beautiful, you're out in the mountains, and it's just a epic lifestyle. You have these mountain views, and it's not always what it's cracked up to be. A big thing is the appeal for independence. Everybody has an adventurous spirit. They want some freedom. They want a simple life. They want to not have to worry about things, and that falls under both homesteaders and preppers. You know, they're preparing for daily challenges, preparing for what might come in the future, preparing for a lot of things. In homesteading, you're preparing for just, you know, to make your life as simple as possible in the long run. That's the way I look at it. In prepping, you're looking at, you know, preparing for a specific scenario that may or may not happen. And there's also the potential in both lifestyles of a healthier lifestyle. With homesteading, you're going to be eating your homegrown vegetables and meat from your own animals on your homestead. With prepping, you're going to have your freeze-dried meals or your beans and rice that are in your bunker. And the one thing I've said before is that all homesteaders are generally preppers. It's just you kind of have to be. But not all preppers are homesteaders. Though it seems like nowadays a lot of them are leaning towards the homesteading. It's kind of the evolution. I was originally in the 80s. I grew up and I saw the movie Red Dawn as a kid. And I also saw the movie The Dawn of the Dead, the original, the 70s one, or maybe late 70s, early 80s, the zombie movie where they all had to survive in a movie theater because of a zombie outbreak. Between that, Red Dawn, and a whole bunch of other 80s movies, I mean, you think about it, Night of the Comet, Maximum Overdrive, The Day After. I saw that in grade school. There's so many movies that just instilled kind of this prepper mentality. And then as I grew up, I had Y2K, you know, just different things that were kind of leaning that way. I went in the military. You know, as you go in the military, you deploy, you see things you don't want to see, you know, happen in your own country, and it kind of just, it makes you think. So it's one of those things that as I was a prepper, drawn into like the guns, the gear, you know, the this and that, and then as you get older, you start realizing, well, that might not happen. You know, the zombie apocalypse is probably not going to happen. You know, who knows? But you might have a financial hardship. You might have, you know, there's all kinds of real things that could happen, and that all that preparedness still helps. The way things are now with the news, everybody always thinks like, this is the worst time ever in history. This is the worst it's going to be. You know, the news is constantly these drones right now. Oh, nobody knows what they are. They know what they are. There's, you know, UFOs now in the news. Oh, blah, blah, blah. 10 years ago, I wish I knew the person who said it. It was a podcast. He said in 10 years, and this was 10 years ago, that disclosure would come out and nobody would care. And that's kind of how it is right now. Nobody really cares. There's always going to be something in the future, always something on the horizon. There's always going to be a potential disaster. And as long as you are prepared somewhat, you know this, it's a much easier pill to swallow than freaking out about every single thing, you know, just stressing out about it. It's not a good thing. As I stated before, the end of the world can happen tomorrow, or you can live to an old age. You need to prepare for both of them. That's one way to look into things as a prepper and also a homesteader. One piece of advice I'm going to give right now. I was told this when I went into boot camp. I'm not a big guy. I'm not a tough guy. And I was told this, and it was the best piece of advice I've ever received in my life. If you think things can't get any worse, and then they do, it wasn't as bad as you thought it was. And if things are really that bad, then they can only get better. So as long as you think that, and it just kind of puts things in perspective, because you're always like, oh, this is the worst that could happen. And then something worse can happen. And then you're like, okay, so maybe that wasn't as bad as I thought it was. And then if it really is bad, like I said, the only option is it can only get better. If it can't physically get any worse, it can only get better. And that's just a good way to look at it. Okay, now we're going to talk about the reality check of homesteading and prepping. For one thing, most people, if you go to Reddit, different Facebook groups and all that, everybody's like, holy cow, homesteading's expensive. You know, prepping's expensive. It is one of those things that, depending on how you do it, it can get expensive. With homesteading and prepping, the initial investments can be astronomical. I mean, look behind me right now. There's the solar panels, our solar batteries, but the same thing goes with homesteading. You know, nowadays it seems like everybody's got to have a tractor. They have to have, you know, UTV, four-wheelers, you know, all this equipment, and this stuff's expensive. And it really depends on how you want to homestead. There's some people that just want to do it simply. We, on the other hand, are more of, I would say, modern homestead. So we have off-grid power, battery backup. You know, we do have a tractor. We have, you know, UTV. We have a lot of modern stuff. But at the same time, we didn't buy it all in one day. As long as you spread it out and do a little bit of it at a time, and as your budget can handle it, it's possible. You know the old saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Same thing goes with homesteading and prepping. Unless you're independently wealthy and you can just afford to buy everything all at once. 99% of us cannot do that. We could not do that. The reason this move to this current homestead might seem like it went seamlessly easy and well was because we learned a lot from our first homestead, and flipping that property and getting this property made it a little easier. Not a lot easier, a little easier. There's also a time commitment. It's one of those things, a lot of it's going to be sweat equity. You're going to be putting in physical labor, your own labor, moving, especially if you're doing homesteading and you're moving from the city to the country. There's a lot of time and labor involved in that. With prepping, it's the same thing. Unless, like I said, like you're independently wealthy, it's going to take you a long time to piece together different things that you're going to need, you know, what you're prepping for, putting food stockpiles up. It all takes time. The next one is the need for specialized knowledge and skills. The need for specialized knowledge and skills. I would say never in the history of mankind has there been so much knowledge available to each and every one of you on this subject. I mean, a lot of the knowledge is maybe good, maybe bad, but it's out there. You have the internet, you have YouTube, you have all these forums, Reddit. Every one of them has a homesteading, prepping groups in there, and there's just a wealth of knowledge. You have people that have relatives who survived the Great Depression that have, you know, lived through some of this, that have been there, done this. You have veterans, you know, just all this stuff that you could just learn all kinds of stuff from people. You have homesteaders that are out there living it every day. The big thing I would say with difference between a prepper and a homesteader is a prepper, you're always planning and preparing, where a homesteader, you're actually doing it, living it, and using it every day. That's one thing that you could learn a lot from another fellow homesteader. And just because I homestead and I do it this way doesn't mean I can't learn something from another homesteader who does it a different way. The best way to learn is from other people. Kind of the same thing with skills. I mean, you could also learn in the old hard way, you know, the school of hard knocks. Just go out there and do it, and you'll learn eventually. But at the same time, it's much easier to ask advice and learn from other people, and then save yourself a little time, save yourself a little money. It's a interesting time though. So hopefully that was helpful. Okay, now I'm going to go into the pros in homesteading and also in prepping. The main one would be increased food security and self-reliance. Even if you prepare just a little bit and you have just a little bit extra food stockpiled, food and water, it's just such a great peace of mind. And as I've stated in the past, that little bit goes a long way. Yeah, you're probably not going to have an alien invasion, or a nuclear war is pretty low. Well, maybe not nowadays, but it's the reality is you might have a financial problem. You might have another pandemic. You might have, you know, just different things where having that little bit of food, it just goes a long way. As stated in my pantry video that I recently did, when I retired early and my loss of income, it hit us hard. But having a lot of groceries prepaid that we invested in earlier, it really helped us because we didn't have to spend, $100 a week like a lot of people do on groceries, $100 or more. I just went to the post office and I could not believe the amount of packaging cost for postage. I mean, everything has literally gone up double since 2020. Like, I just can't believe it. The other thing is self-reliance. I mean, how good is it just to not have to go to the store? I mean, a lot of people like to go to the store just to go to the store and just spend money, but we hardly go. We don't have to go. We try to be as self-reliant as possible. And I'm not going to lie and be like, yeah, we're 100% self-reliant. We don't, we are not. We can't produce everything here. We produce our own water, electric, milk, some things, but I can't make Doritos. I still like Doritos. There's a lot of stuff that we just can't produce. Salt, I have to buy salt. We stock up on it. We have a lot of it. Same thing with a lot of dry goods, but we don't make it. We don't grow everything. We grow some things. So we try to be as self-reliant as possible within our own personal goals, I guess. On a side note, it's December and I'm in a t-shirt. The other thing is the potential for financial savings and reduced costs. Kind of what I was going into with like having a pantry, reducing cost all around. We sold a property for more money in one area and bought a property much cheaper in a different area to Homestead. That's the ideal way to do it. You don't want to sell a property at a loss and go move to an area that costs 10 times as much as what you just left, because then you're going to be in debt. You need to look at it that way. In homesteading, that's the plan. You do want to have some financial independence also. It's a great feeling not owing anything. We don't owe anything. And that's the ultimate freedom I believe you could have in America, is owning your own place and not owing anybody anything. That is probably the greatest reward of homesteading, even if you're not a homesteader, just having a place, a home that you own and you owe nobody. It's a great feeling. Reduced expenses. So that's one of those things, you're probably thinking like, oh, these preppers, homesteaders, you got to buy tractors, this, that. When your initial investment, none of this stuff has to be new, and a tractor you might not even need. You really need to evaluate wants and needs. Also look into like side hustles, different things. I have a couple side hustles. YouTube doesn't pay much, but it's fun and I enjoy it. It's fun to get to communicate with other people, like-minded individuals. But yeah, there's always some side hustles. Living simply also helps reduce your spending. As I stated in one of my first videos, I think my video when I quit my job, it's not how much you make, it's how much you keep is what's important. So even though we are making less now, we are living better than we did when we were in our old place financially. It's a much more simple life and we're still reducing costs. We still have some expenses coming. We're putting in a root cellar / tornado shelter. We're still getting a building spray foamed. I mean, there's some expenses that are big expenses. We had a budget for those items well ahead of moving here. And it was one of those things too, and we looked at properties, we had to subtract the things that we wanted from our highest price we could pay. And that's just one of those things. If you're planning to move to the country and you want to do all this extra stuff, buy a tractor, build a bunker in there and all this other stuff, and you don't have the money outright, you're trying to save money, you need to subtract that. That would be the best way to save some money off the hand right there. And another thing is the areas. The area where I live in now, the prices are going up, but there's still a lot of other areas that are still cheap. I still find them. I like to still go on Zillow and just look at properties. The other thing with homesteading and prepping is a connection to nature. I've never been outside as much in my life, besides the military, as in my adult life as I have been now. Even when I was younger and big into mountain climbing, mountaineering and things like that, I don't think I was outside as much. I'm outside like every day. I mean, for hours, and it's just a great feeling. It's almost that great reset in my own self-being. I used to spend 10 hours plus in the office every day, and that was just normal. And I would sit in the office and just dream of homesteading, dream of the mountains, dream, and it still gets me that is my reality now. I still have dreams. You still have to have dreams, even when you are living the best version of your life and you're living this, what was your dream, you still have to have dreams and goals to further it. They might not ever happen, but I still have dreams of what I want to do in this place. May or may not happen, but it's pretty good right now, so I don't want to be too greedy with my dreams, but it's good to have them though. If you don't dream, how are they going to come true? And how are you going to manifest and work hard for something if you don't dream it. I know this dream that we have, that we made reality, is a dream for a lot of people that they might not ever make a reality, sadly. I've always gone by the old, I'm a Marine, so the Full Metal Jacket, you know, the line in there, you talk the talk, but do you walk the walk? And I've always been happy with myself that I do walk the walk as well as talk the talk. All throughout my life, many things surprised me, surprised other people that I said I was gonna do, and then I did it. Good, bad, indifferent, I still did it. That's the only way to know. Otherwise, I don't want to have any regrets. So that's one good thing with homesteading and prepping. A great connection to nature. Probably one of the greatest things with homesteading and prepping. A little bit more on the homesteading side, but as I said, a lot of preppers become homesteaders. It's just evolution. Now we're going to get into the cons of homesteading and prepping. There's always a negative side to everything, unfortunately. This, I would say, goes more towards homesteading, but it could also go towards prepping, because some people take it to the extremes, but the potential for isolation and lack of community. Some people get so caught up in fear and preparing that they kind of close themselves off and don't get out as much. There's always that panic that something's gonna happen, I need to prepare and things like that. And then also with homesteading, a lot of times you move to a more rural area, you're further away from people. Our closest neighbors are far away. And you don't see people as much as you often do. I used to go to the office every day. I would be in meetings all day long, constantly talking to people. Now I've noticed I don't do that. I'm on YouTube, which is a little different, but now I notice I go to the gas station, I'm chatting with random strangers. I go to the post office, I'm chatting with random strangers. I go to the store, everywhere now. I feel that need of connection that I don't get every day that I used to get at work. And, you know, because my wife and I are always here. It's just her and I and the dog. She's in meetings and work all day long. So she still has that connection with coworkers and things like that. Now, I don't know. I'm isolated. I really do feel isolated at times. And this could happen to a lot of homesteaders, you know, especially if you go remote off the grid. The other negative is greater risk for natural disasters, weather, and things like that. Here we can get ice storms and you just stay home, and it could be a while. You know, people around me lose power. It takes a while. City, I knew people that would order stuff on Amazon and expect it in one day with Prime, just so they didn't have to drive to the store because they're, you know, just didn't want to. Things like that in rural settings, it's going to take you a little bit longer for things to come your way. Just everything is a little different, you know, medical emergencies, fires, things like that. You're not going to have the same level that you do in a rural area are going to have. And as a prepper, you're just constantly planning for disasters and things like that, and it takes a toll on you. You're thinking, oh, the zombie apocalypse, oh, the UFOs, oh, now the news is saying drones. How do I prepare for drones now? I've prepared for zombies. You know, how do I switch from that? And that's a constant thing, because the media is just going to constantly feed you negative, you know, threats all the time. I hate to say it, but it's one of those things like there's not a lot of cures for things because there's more money in just keeping people sick, and that this is my belief. And it's the same thing with wars. We're going to constantly have wars when people profit from them, and it's much easier to control people when they're scared. And that is one of the reasons why our media is just constantly feeding us this fear tactics. So that's one of those things that it takes a toll on preppers and homesteaders, because I believe when I was more into prepping, it really took a toll on me. And now as a homesteader, I sometimes don't put the news on for a couple days just to disconnect. And you know what? It's the same BS when I connect back in. When I used to drive to work every day, I would put the news on in the morning just to make sure the world was still there on the way to work. It's one of those things now, if, you know, as long as we wake up and we're still here, the world is still here. The outside of our area, who knows? But in our little area, our community, it's generally pretty good. Big city problems, you know, are far and few out in here, you know, God willing. I mean, but it's one of those things that as a homesteader, prepper, that constant fear can just really eat at you. So keep that in mind. Next thing, the final thing is on this episode is balancing the scales and finding the right fit. The big thing, even when I did the video on the pantry, is you need to personalize your prepping and homesteading approach. I can tell you how to do things, but the way I do things might not work for you. And it's kind of with everything. You know, we don't have a mega bunker underground, but maybe you need a mega bunker underground. You know, I'm really not preparing for anything in specific. Maybe you're preparing for alien drone zombies. I don't know. But everybody's going to have their own specific personalized needs, and everybody's going to have their own budget. Everybody's going to have their own amount of time that they can invest. And that's one of the things you really need to think about too. And that kind of is, I would say, a pro and a con. More likely it's going to be a pro though. The big thing is you need to set realistic goals and expectations. As stated with the pantry video, we didn't do it all in one day. If you're building a homestead, you got to realize that it's not going to, you know, Rome wasn't built in a day. Same thing with a homestead isn't built in a day. It's going to take time. And a lot of times it takes the longest time just to find the perfect property for the homestead. So that's one of those things to keep in mind. And as stated with those realistic goals, it's kind of what I've stated before. You know, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? You know, don't expect everything to be done all at once. I'm personally hitting some burnout right now. In my previous life, I was a project engineer for a manufacturing plant, and I was involved in a lot of projects. One of the things with projects, they had completion dates and a lot of timelines. Me personally right now, having early retirement, I have many projects with no end dates. So I'm trying to just get them all done all at once. I'm more stressed out now than probably was when I was working. And it's a strange thing because it's an unexpected thing. So I'm trying to now realize that what is the rush? There is no rush. I need to set realistic goals. They'll get done one way or another, but they don't need to be done instantly. They're going to take some time. The other thing too is identifying your resources along with your priorities. You might have a lot of new resources around you that you don't even know about. As a homesteader or as a prepper, probably the first thing to do is start looking at some potential resources. Maybe that you're a new prepper and you don't know anything, but your neighbor is a vet. He's got a lot of knowledge. That person, you know, if you live in the city, but you know you have some friends that live in the country, go talk to them. There's a never-ending source of information. Finding YouTube channels such as this one. I don't know everything, but I know a little, and maybe I might just give you a sliver of information on one topic, and then you'll go research that on your own, and it'll just open up a path to a whole new set of resources that you didn't even know about. But the big thing would be priorities. And I guess if you made it this far in this video, you're pretty serious on the wanting to get either into homesteading or preparing. The priorities are a big thing. And that's kind of what I'm now switching up my projects into priorities. And then a couple people may get some of this stuff, but there used to be in previous life this thing called PFMEAs. It's like it's more or less where you think of everything that can go wrong and you rank it and you get like a risk priority number, and it really helps because something may have a high number and maybe a really bad risk, but the potential for it to actually happen is very low. So you really don't need to worry about it as much. But there might be something that's not as high of a risk, but it has a high potential to happen. So you could do things like that to kind of rank projects on your property, preparations you're gonna buy for as if you're a prepper. The marketing for preppers is crazy right now. I mean, they're gonna tell you you need bug out bags, you're gonna need, you know, bunkers, you're gonna need guns, ammo, gas masks, you know, all this stuff. It's so funny because I was a prepper for a long time. Like, I've got enough stuff for like a surplus store. When we made this move, I sold a lot of stuff. I used to be the biggest gun nut most people knew. I sold a lot of guns. I kept a few because we have a homestead and we have to worry about security, but a lot of it went to help fund the homestead. What's interesting is I don't miss a lot of that stuff, and a lot of that's, I'm going through more of it and it's probably going to be sold. I probably have like bug out bags, like in military backpacks. I probably have like 10 or 15 backpacks. I need one or two. You know, different sizes maybe, and that's it. We use the one for hiking and things like that, but I don't need all those bags. It's funny, you get marketed for things that you just really don't need. I would also recommend really looking at your wants versus needs. The old saying, keep it simple. It goes with prepping and homesteading. I'm gonna end it there because otherwise I'm just gonna keep rambling, but hopefully this was helpful. Please comment on this video. I'm curious what people's takes are on the pros and cons of prepping and homesteading. It used to be if you were a prepper, people just made fun of you at work if they found out. Sorry I rambled on this one. This one, strange week. Maybe it's all the drones in the news or something, I don't know. I wasn't prepared for that one. So until next time, thanks again. Like and subscribe. I gotta support this shirt because it was a gift.